Committee of the Geographical Association. It's absolutely thrilling for us to see so many people joining us after school tonight. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Julia Tanner. I'm a member of the Primary and Early Years Committee, and this is the first in a series of events we hope to offer in the next few months. Our plan is to offer practical support and advice to schools and teachers to help them develop and build the strength of geography in their school. Now, this first focus today is on the recent blog by Ian Friedman, Ofsted lead on geography in the outstanding primary schools. And I'm thrilled to say that Ian and his colleague have joined us tonight to take part. So we're especially pleased to welcome Ian. He is the HMI for geography, and he's come today as an observer to listen, to hear what we have to say about the blog and to hear the response of people in the wider primary geography community. We're also very pleased to welcome his colleague, Jonathan Kay, to the meeting. And they're very keen to hear what it is we have to say. We've also got a number of committee members here today who are going to be answering questions later on. So if we could just move on, Anthony, to the next slide. Thank you. This is the structure of what we're doing this evening. We plan to finish about 6 o'clock. I'm starting by welcoming you all. And then Anthony, who is another member of the Early Years and Primary Phase Committee, is going to talk a little bit about the context of tonight's discussion, the publication of that blog report by Ian. Then I'm very grateful to say that Helen Martin, a head teacher and chair of the committee, and Paula Owens, who is a teacher and consultant and also a member of the committee, are going to speak to us about their thoughts on the blog. After that, we're going to move on to an open forum. If you have questions or comments, we'd really like you to put those in the chat. With so many people here, it's not possible to invite you to contribute verbally. So we'd like you to put your questions in the chat, and somebody will be monitoring the chat, picking out the most important issues raised. And as I say, we hope to close at about 6 o'clock. One of the things that we'll be doing later throughout the session and publishing later is a resource list. So within a few days, you should find a resource list full of ideas and suggestions of resources that you might find useful to do with the issues raised in tonight's session. So if I can move on, we'll move on to, oh, sorry, Anthony, if we can just go back, and our planned next session, as you can see on the screen there, will be Wednesday, the 30th of June at 5 p.m. So we hope you'll find this so useful and enjoyable that lots of you will come back to that. Thanks, Anthony. Can I pass over to you now?
Thank you, Julia, and a very warm welcome to you all from the Geographical Association and from myself, Anthony Barlow. I'm a teacher educator at the University of Roehampton in southwest London, and I'm geography lead there with a lot of wonderful colleagues. Just a note about how we're going to process your data. It seems like an odd thing to start off with, but you all graciously shared with me your email, and I can assure you that they have been destroyed after they've been used to send you this link. So if you need to find out more about these sessions in the future to make sure that we are GDPR compliant, we want to assure you that you will need to look on the Twitter feed that you found this from originally, probably. So look on the EYPPC Twitter feed for the next links, and Eventbrite link probably to this event next. So like I say, a very warm welcome to you all. Just to say that we are recording the chat and anybody can use this. The chat will be seen by all, so make sure that that's appropriate what you're putting in there. Tell us where you are though, tell us your role. That would be something that would be really fascinating to us. And as Julia said, the host will pick the questions to talk about afterwards when we've had the first few introductory slides. And if we don't pick up your query today, we hope to be able to pick up those queries in future sessions and through the publications that we'd just like to inform you about now. So first of all, perhaps some of you need to know who the GA is and the wonderful publications that you can see on the website. So geography.org.uk is the place to go to. This is the screenshot of our flagship professional journal, Primary Geography. There may be subscribers online now. There may be people who've not heard of it before. So do have a look at the journals to see if this is something you'd like to look into. Subscription gives you access from 2003 as PDFs, as well as 3 wonderful copies that will drop on your doormat as exciting bundles throughout the year. And just to say something briefly about the committee as well, we represent members of the GA from the south coast of England via London and Reading and Oxford to Bristol, to the Isle of Sheppey and Canterbury, to the northwest of England, to the northeast, and all the way to Shetland as well. We've got somebody here from Shetland. And there's also a range of other member benefits. If you are a member of the GA, you can get discounts off publications that you can see on the screen there, a whole range of different things authored by people in the room and beyond to try and give you that step up, that chance to curriculum make in a really powerful way that you might want to look into. Certainly curriculum delivery is something that some people might advocate, but we are really curriculum makers, curriculum designers, and we know that one size certainly doesn't fit all in terms of curriculum that you might see in your school. So do take a look at these and the various publications that you can find online. So what is the YPPC's role in supporting the blog from Ofsted and the other various publications that you can see that are published by various people to guide you, to suggest what you might do to develop your geography? And I've looked through some of these documents and this word peak comes up several times. So this is my particular theme as we start off. How can we achieve peak geography? And you may think, why peak? And I'll tell you in a little moment. Certainly as a committee, we sometimes look and we see headlines like you can see on the screen there. Pupils failed by geography teachers, the boring geography curriculum. Children are ditching geography. It lacks relevance. And you may well have seen headlines like this yourself. And that's such a shame. We passionately believe that geography can really be a fascinating and an engaging subject. And we hope that you do too. And that's why you're here today, to learn a little bit more. But of course, you'll have read the blog last week, we hope. If you haven't, we're not going to tell you what's in it. Please do go and read the HMI Ian Freeland's blog. But of course, it was then reported through the press. And if this is the only version you saw, you may again have been disappointed. Ofsted reveals concerns. Inspectorate warns that half schools it focused on last year were not meeting the national curriculum. And then in Schools Week, very few primary teachers are trained to teach geography, which is something that's dear to my heart as well. So sometimes these headlines can really get us down as geographers, but we certainly don't get down from some of the deeper information that's in some of these reports. Amanda Spielman, the Ofsted Chief Inspector, talks about primary in early years being the wonder years. We shouldn't be killing the love of knowledge and learning. We shouldn't be jumping through mark scheme hoops. We should be building on their intellect and curiosity. We should be, first instance of peak, piquing their interests and piquing their passions. That's really what we're aiming to do. Then of course we've got the national curriculum as well, which helps us. That's really, really supportive. That talks about a high quality geography education being about curiosity and fascination about the world and the people that will remain with them for the rest of their lives. And then finally, just the final thing I'm going to say really is just picking out this second use of the word peak to try and achieve peak geography from Ian Freeland's report. Geography helps children to make sense of the world around them, and it piques their curiosity in places and people. Done well, it engages pupils in their world, often spurring them into action. And yes, and is fun. Let's just focus on that word as well. Think about how fun the geography across the different schemes, across the different lessons that you do actually is. So that's all from me.
I'm thrilled to be able to introduce the first of our speakers. Helen is the head teacher of a federation of 2 schools. She's also chair of the Early Years and Primary Phase Committee at the moment. And Helen is absolutely passionate about the benefits of geography for primary age children. She's also very passionate about outdoor learning and is a forest school leader. So I'm going to pass over to Helen, and she's got some slides to share with you.
Thank you, Julia. Welcome, everyone. This is a very exciting moment for our committee. Thank you to all of the team who put it together for you for today. And thank you to Ian for joining us. So good afternoon. This is a moment to cherish and some time for you and some time for geography. I'm speaking today to give you my view and the thoughts of the Early Years and Primary Phase Committee. I hope to give you those thoughts and some focus, but also some support, some praise and care for our profession. We believe Ian's blog has given us directed and strong leadership, and that we have an opportunity to take this to lead our next steps. I am head teacher of 2 rural schools in West Sussex. Like you as practicing teachers, we are exhausted with the stresses, anxiety and pressures of COVID, lockdowns, symptoms, bubbles, and every disruption that has brought us within our classrooms. To be frank, and I know you'll all be sitting here feeling this last year has been a nightmare for us all in classrooms and in education. I know that you have been doing your best, keeping that smile going for children and families and supporting each other and your colleagues, albeit at a distance. I know there are schools here that are working on your curriculum, working so hard to maybe get out of a category, dealing with staffing and safeguarding issues on a daily basis. But the positives from this pandemic are clear. We must, in education, try to do things differently from how we have done them before. The creativity that comes following times like these is important for us to hold on to. I've discussed this in assembly with my junior children, and we've all discussed how we're going to move on with our creativity in the next stage of our lives, and how unusual and different and exciting this will be for them to be part of that. We know that this is why you are listening in today, to take some of that creativity. We must lead our thinking through our ethos and through our intent for each curriculum subject. But what does that look like following COVID? Does it look the same as it did before? Are you all the same? Or has the experience of the last year changed you, changed your focus, the things you care about? You know that through the pandemic, you have led your subjects, your classes and your schools with clarity for your school ethos. You will have placed well-being above all else. You will have delivered foundation subjects in a way that you might never have done before in order to support, inspire and enliven remote and then face-to-face learning. You will have placed character education higher than before and seen that communication, oracy, discussion, debate and questioning have been misplaced in the virtual world, and that you must prioritise these on your return to normality. As the primary committee, we know that geographical learning can support a child's development with all of these things, that we place our children into a global context, understand the hardships and the interest of their local places that are important to them, support their growing worry and understanding of the climate emergency, and expand their thinking on identity and diversity. We know that children want to write about what matters to them, what is changing in their world. We know that by using geographical inquiry to context, books, maps, and simply by being in a place, their writing, speaking and listening and understanding flourishes. I can see my reception children finally playing in the sand, making multiple routes, roads and mountains, whilst also becoming mermaids by partly burying their friends. Next one, please, Anthony. We know that children remember more when they are having fun. Ian has agreed with this in his blog. Children need this more than ever, and so do we as educators. So we must be ambitious and do things differently, reframe, leave some things behind. Change our implementation to suit the learners that are now in front of us. We know our children need to get outside. I've given you some pictures of Forest School and some field work from our school and some great mapping as well on the screen. We know they need to get outside to stop, play, get muddy, take their toys, their cameras, their tape measures, and then ponder. Stop and ponder. Ask the creative unknown questions. Ask more, then work out how to solve these difficult questions in fieldwork. Why is there less traffic now? More litter, less trains? Fieldwork is ready for you all simply by being out there, stopping, lifting your heads away from the paper to the screen and knowing that you can find out answers to those ponderings, to learn ways to find out, to develop questions, questionnaires, mapping, problem solving and measuring. This brings this subject to life and just happens to be in the places that children will love to be most of all, outside with their friends, sharing places they know and sharing new places. We must be bold enough to step back and see what is going to make the biggest difference now and how children learn best. By being active learners who are empowered to learn about their locational knowledge and their geographical skills. They can make decisions about their world around them and feel back in control after a year like no other. We are not going to get everything right. Ian leads us into thinking about what we must work on, to ponder on ourselves. In a recent tweet from Ofsted, it was stated that curriculum is always a developing process. Curriculum development is teacher development. You will be working on your progression documents, thinking about what is taught first, what is next and why, but be kind to yourselves. There are different children in front of you, but be ambitious, curious and strong in your decisions to put geography high on the agenda. We must indeed be proud, as the final paragraph in the blog states. In our schools, we use the character education ethos from the 7 Cs brought through the Bill Lucas Expansive Education Network from the University of Winchester. My most favourite of the 7, which I mention in assembly on a regular basis, is curiosity. So I was particularly happy to see this in the summation of the document. This is the way to be a successful geographer and learner, and to lead a successful subject. To be curious about their world, their place within it and the action that they are able to make. As I leave you with Dr. Paula Owens, who will expand further about what resources we advocate to help you all, I must say one final thing. Listen and observe the lives and loves of the children in your schools. They are curious learners who, with your strong determination and love of the subject, will thrive in these still difficult times. Just take a moment in your planning, your progression, your risk assessments and your timetabling to stop and ponder yourself and to listen in your classrooms to the fun of an excitement that you are creating. These will be the memorable geography lessons that will make a positive change. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paula Owens, and I am too a member of the Early Years and Primary Phase Committee. I'm a teacher and consultant. I work on a range of primary geography projects and with different schools around the country. Thank you, Helen, for inspiring us to think in powerful ways about how geography can meet our children's needs and how new ways of thinking and doing can help us build on our successes, something Ian is hopeful that schools can do too. I too have witnessed over the past year or so the amazing resilience and adaptability of schools and teachers to these unprecedented times. Apart from all the other demands and needs that we never dreamt we would be addressing 2 years ago, I know that many schools are spending time developing their geography curriculum, thinking about its purpose and intent, and selecting the most appropriate content. They're thinking about its implementation, how it will be taught, and about the impact on pupils. And in part, there is no doubt that this is fueled by the 2019 Ofsted Education Inspection Framework, which emphasises that we truly and genuinely need to provide a broad and balanced curriculum. Curriculum matters. Curriculum making matters. And it is what happens when we look to the heart of what we teach and why, and ensure that there is purpose and design in what, when, and how geographical content is taught. Geography really matters too. And Ian begins his blog by stating how important geography is for helping children of all ages to make sense of the world. He finishes by saying how much children in the schools surveyed enjoy the subject. How fantastic is that? And congratulations to those schools who've instilled such a love of the subject with their children. Now, if that was the entire story, we would not be here today. But we know that in between those positives, there are areas for development. There always are areas for development. So what can we do and where can we start? Well, first of all, we want to say to you as a committee, don't panic. There is a lot of support out there. We have at the EYPPC compiled a list of useful resources for you, as Julia has indicated, that address the key issues raised by Ofsted. But within the short time we have together now, I'm going to highlight some positive ways forward with geographical skills and fieldwork in particular in mind. If you could click, please, Anthony. Thank you. So just a small part of the overall picture, but just some pointers as to where we might go to get some advice and what we might put into place that's fairly straightforward. As Ian states, fieldwork is vital to geographical practice. However, Ofsted findings indicate that it's not just about getting out there and visiting different places, great though that is, but it's more about having relevant opportunities to apply geographical techniques, collecting, analysing and presenting data in meaningful ways. Next slide, please, Anthony. Oh, thank you. Sorry. No, sorry, can you go back? Thank you. So how well do we know what's in the locality and neighbourhood of our school? What is unique about its setting and context? Thinking about this and auditing the resources on your doorstep is a really powerful way to identify the possibilities for investigation. Julia Tanner has written an extremely helpful progression in fieldwork document that will help us audit our local area and then think about progression, both in terms of opportunities for inquiry and about the kinds of geographical techniques we might apply. And as Julia says, there'll be links to all this later on. Now, using an inquiry framework is a relevant and appropriate way to teach geography. Geography is a doing subject. And if we can identify a genuine need to know, and if we can build on existing knowledge in purposeful contexts, then thinking through the process of inquiry is also a great prompt for using those appropriate geographical skills. Thinking about what data will we gather and why, how will we collect it, how we analyse it and present it, and who might we present it to, what's the point of it all. The example images here on the screen show some Year 5 pupils exploring their hometown, using cameras to collect images of different human and physical features that interested them, evaluating the town's characteristics and how it's changing in the process. Back in class, the fieldwork didn't suddenly end, but it continued with a critical thinking and mapping task. Could these pupils select just 3 images that best summed up their town? Which were their favourites and why? Could they explain? Could they locate and annotate the images using digital mapping by zooming into a relevant scale? Incidentally, we worked with 7 primary schools on this project, and in each of these, pupils were overwhelmingly negative about their hometown before the fieldwork and positive afterwards. I didn't realise my town had so many interesting places. I didn't know there was so much nature, old buildings, new buildings, etc. Sums up the flavour of many of the comments. Local area investigations can be very powerful, especially, as Helen notes, because children have been deprived access to places and to playing in them with their friends for so long. Thinking about our home places and spaces and how we use them or how they're changing has perhaps never been so relevant. Now, Ian also mentions scale as an area that pupils need to work more confidently in. And using fieldwork and maps together, perhaps to measure routes and areas, locate specific places visited, and add a range of data is just one way in which children can develop their understanding of scale as they learn to model the real world through maps and build that progression from concrete to more abstract thinking. Next slide, please, Anthony. Thank you. When we collect purposeful and relevant data, it's just a gift that keeps on giving. Back in class, there were always more questions to be asked, information to map, graph, write about and analyse, findings to discuss, debate and present. Fieldwork provides that meaningful kickstart, that thread or checkpoint for other curricular work in geography. For example, in Key Stage 2, perhaps learning about natural resources, economic activities or trade. And in these images, these Year 5 and 6 pupils have been learning about the port of Sheerness, a significant UK port that many were blissfully unaware of before the Fieldwork project. It's just another example of capitalising on your local environment, knowing what's out there and how to access it and dovetail it to your curriculum. These pupils also had opportunities to present their data to a real audience. They invited parents and also students from the local secondary school. Local area studies in Year 6 can make great transition projects, giving children greater confidence too in negotiating new locales as they move schools. And there are many examples of transition projects on the Geographical Association website, carried out as part of the last Global Learning Programme, as this example was. Next slide, please, Anthony. Thank you. So in summary, we do have much to build on. And as Helen says, be kind to yourselves. You can't do everything at once. So perhaps if you can identify a few priorities, that's a good place to start. Here are 3 relatively quick ways to make a positive difference in your geography provision. 1, do look at the progression in the fieldwork document when you are able to access it and use it to help you audit and plan or tweak what you already do. Think about how fieldwork can help your children ask and answer those burning geographical questions that fuel their curiosity, and also how it can help provide a coherence to your geography curriculum. 2nd, do access a range of maps at different scales that children can become familiar with and give them lots of different opportunities to experience these. Consider programs like Digimap for schools that provide access to OS mapping, along with measuring, annotation, and other tools that will help children develop these geographical skills. There is a free planning and progression guidance too from the Ordnance Survey that will be in your links. Consider other resources too, such as blow-up globes for every class, a very cheap option, or a set of atlases for each key stage, a more expensive but very useful option. And finally, if you don't already belong, do join the Subject Association. The GA has a free primary membership offer and a full offer that comes with discounts in the shop and access to greater resources, as well as the Quality Mark accreditation and the Primary Geography Journal, as Anthony mentioned, which is full of great classroom practice and comes 3 times a year. The Royal Geographical Society is the other geography subject association, and they too have great resources on their website, and they offer chartered geographer status. So I'll leave you with these thoughts. Thank you so much for your time and good luck with everything the rest of term brings. If you do get out of some fieldwork shortly, please share it with us and tag us on Twitter, because geography enables us to make sense of the world, feeds our curiosity about and passion for the planet. And yes, all of this is official. It's fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Helen and Paula, reminding us of some very important points about primary geography. It's very refreshing, Helen, to hear a head teacher talk about the current situation as an opportunity for change, an opportunity to think about children's well-being and character education, and an opportunity for fun, getting outside and building curious, active learners, building on what they enjoy doing for themselves, and tackling those really vital issues of the day, such as climate emergency, diversity and identity. And Paula, thank you so much for your emphasis on curriculum making, very dear to my own heart, on the importance of geographical inquiry and fieldwork, and especially the importance of local area work. I feel so strongly that if we study children's own local area, we demonstrate to them that it is interesting and important and worthy of study. And by application, their lives, their community, they themselves are interesting and worthy and important. Those key sources of support there are available to all of you. I'd particularly encourage you to investigate, if you haven't already done it, free primary membership of the Geographical Association, which is a fantastic way of finding out what the GA offers to primary practitioners. Okay, so I explained earlier on, we're now going to move into an open forum. I think it'll be about 20 minutes, looking at the clock. I can see there's been lots and lots and lots and lots of comments on the chat, and there are people in the background who've been monitoring that, and I'm hoping very much that they are being able to pick out the issues and questions that are being raised by most people so that we can attend to them. So I've got a number of Geographical Association Early Years and Primary Committee members here ready and willing to answer your questions. We very much hope we can answer them all today, but if we run out of time, then we hope to come back to them on a subsequent occasion. So can I just check, Kate, do you know where we could start with the questions yet? Have you been able to sift through and find the most important topics?
I think the ones that seem to be coming through the most are about fieldwork and how that can be, how outdoor learning can particularly tie in, and I think the discussion was about forest school and whether that can tie in to geographical learning, and also about how we can then evidence any work. I think people are concerned about evidence in children's books, and if children are outside doing work, what kind of evidence we can actually get in those books as well.
Right, okay, so we've got a section of questions about fieldwork, about forest schools and how that links with fieldwork, and how we can provide the evidence of learning through fieldwork. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, right. Helen, could I come back to you on forest schools? As a forest school leader, I know you're very well placed to answer, well, a forest school leader and a passionate geographer, you're very well placed to answer this question. And then Sharon Witt, I'm sure you're there somewhere. If I could come to you to talk more generally about fieldwork, that would be great. Okay, thanks, Helen.
Okay, thanks, Julia. Yeah, so forest school, my next favourite subject to talk about. So yeah, I'm a forest school leader. I've been doing it for 12 years. So I fitted the two together, but I just want to make sort of two comments about that really. Firstly, forest school and fieldwork are two different things. So if I am doing forest school in the way that I do when I'm training people as forest school leaders, it will be very much like a planning in the moment. If you were early years, it's providing provocations, which mainly is your place, the forest that you're in, and for you to be supporting that their learning, children's learning through the forest, through that environment, and for you to be going into their play very much like you would do if you were an early years practitioner. And this provides huge opportunity because the children's brains are in an amazingly calm place because they are in the woods and they are out and they're enjoying it with their friends. So forest school is a great opportunity to enable children to love place. Now, fieldwork, as we know, needs to include other more important, not more important, but other issues such as measuring questionnaires, finding out inquiry questions, all of the things that Paula has discussed and I touched on as well. However, there is a merging of those two things that can take place. So if I'm going out on forest school, I will also take tape measures and measuring equipment and clipboards, and I'll measure the stream and how fast it's flowing, and I will have a discussion and going into their play because that's what they're interested in. It may have been that we might have done field work in the river at another time, and then they bring that skill into forest school, or the experimentation that we've done in forest school they'll take back to their river field work. So I think we have to be very clear on the fact that the fieldwork skills, particularly if you look at Julia's progression document in the spring primary geography magazine, really shows you that those are specific skills, but the two can intertwine with each other, but really hold in place that actually you don't want to be saying to children, today we're doing fieldwork in forest school, because it needs to come from the child. However, you want to offer the child an opportunity to experiment and to play and to be exploratory and playful during forest school with their geographical skills. I hope that helps, that they are two different things, but they can merge, but they need to be taught and supported at two different times. And then the two can merge together once those skills are embedded.
That's great, Helen. Thank you very much indeed for explaining that so clearly. Sharon, could I come to you to talk more generally about fieldwork and evidence of learning through fieldwork?
Yes, thank you ever so much, Julia. Hello, everybody. Really lovely to see you. I'd like to just echo all of Helen's comments and the fact that curiosity and exploration is not separate from developing the skills. They can run alongside each other. As for recording and responding to place, I think that the primary curriculum offers so many opportunities, whether it's through photographs or through journey sticks, which some of you may have seen the wonderful Teacher TV from Jane Whittle, which, although the technology has moved on hugely, the way that Jane teaches mapping is fantastic and is definitely worth accessing by Googling free Teacher TV journey sticks. There are lots of opportunities for journals and for journaling, for artwork, for poetry writing, or for all sorts of different kinds of writing, which could then embed your geography across the curriculum as well. So I hope that there's just a wealth of opportunities, and I think that fieldwork sometimes might happen and isn't evidenced in books. And I think perhaps photographs that perhaps go on a website or a blog will evidence what your school has been doing in different year groups as well. So I hope that just gives you a flavour. I could go on for ages, but I'm aware there are lots of other questions and lots of opportunities to read examples, I think, in primary geography. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That's fantastic. And can I just recommend, for those of you who are not aware of it, a book edited by Stephen Scoffham about creative approaches in geography, which includes a wealth of ideas for representing showing the learning of geography, which isn't necessarily about writing something in an exercise book. Stephen, would you like to say something about that?
I think creativity is one of those words which has cropped up a lot, and it's inherent in geography. You don't necessarily think of geography as a creative subject like music or art, where you go out and be creative, but actually it is a very creative subject because it's about interpreting the world. And geography, if you want to look at it in terms of branches, there's a great branch of geography called human geography, and there's a great branch of geography called physical geography. And geography brings those perspectives together. And one of the sort of definitions of creativity is that it's about bringing different ideas together where they rub up against each other and there's a creative spark. It's a bit like flints. Bang them together and they explode. So human geography and physical geography, put them together, you get an explosive mix, and it's a creative mix. And I think that's really exciting. And another way of looking at it is to say, well, geography is about earth writing. It means, if you trace it back to its Greek roots, it means precisely that, earth writing, geographia. Geo, earth, and graphia, the writing or the drawing. And how you describe the world, how you analyze it, how you make sense of it, that's a really creative interpretive act. So lots of different ways in which geography is not sort of sterile, it's not fixed. We're telling a story of the world that's emerging. The whole idea of the word of story. Stories are creative acts, aren't they? So we can come at this lots of different ways, and I'm certain you will when you recognize it. I never thought of myself as being involved in a creative subject until my colleagues came along and watched a teaching session, and they said, actually what you're doing is opening opportunities, asking questions where pupils and students can respond in different ways. As soon as you start asking a question or getting students to ask questions and children to ask questions, you are opening the door to creativity.
Thank you very much indeed, Stephen. That's just great. Anthony, I wondered, would you like to say something about the importance of local fieldwork before we move on to the next topic?
Thank you. And just one quick win that I would say that you could do with your school, if you're subject lead, is go for a walk together. I've done it with colleagues in initial teacher education. I've done it as an inset for schools. Just that process of walking and talking and noticing and being in the environment, who's connected to what, who knows this or that, what do you notice about the lampposts, about the street names, that local etymology, who lives where, having that time and space, perhaps on an inset day rather than at the end of a long day, but having that time to wander. And I've had some really inspiring experiences doing that, or just looking out of the window of the staff room, going to the top of the school and just looking and seeing how far you can see. That inspiration that you can get from just noticing, I think I would really advocate wherever you can.
Oh, thank you, Anthony. That's great. And if any of you do look at the progression in geographical fieldwork experiences that I wrote recently for primary geography, there is a local area audit to help you see the opportunities for geography in your immediate local area. So I hope you find that useful. Kate, could I come back to you to ask what other questions people have been asking, what other issues people are asking about?
Yeah, it seems to be moving towards mapping and the issues to do with scale. So I've got a couple. There's what are the specific expectations for scale and teaching scale, and what should the children understand from early years through to Key Stage 2? And also, in sort of in line with that, what are the expectations for meeting the mapping conventions? It was specifically for Key Stage 2, but I think in any key stage that would be helpful for as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've got several people here who could contribute a lot about mapping. Paula, would you like to say something about the DigiMap resources, which are so fantastic? I can't see you any longer, Paula, but I'm sure you're there somewhere.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned Digimaps earlier on. It's about £100 a year for primary schools to buy into, but it does give you full access to Ordnance Survey maps at all scales from, I think, 1250 scale, so which zooms into your school grounds, and to global scale as well, not at Ordnance Survey level, obviously, but Ordnance Survey for GB and global mapping more generally. And is a great tool for using with measuring, all kinds of measuring tools. You can measure area, you can measure journey lengths, you can add and annotate, and there are also a great deal of free resources. So I think at the moment they're offering a month's free trial, and if you look at the website, then you can have a look at all the resources which are available for free, whether you've signed up or not. And one of those resources is a progression in mapping document that I have just put a link to in the chat. So if you find that and click on it, you will get the progression in mapping document with some guidance there. And on the Ordnance Survey site, there are also free resources as well to do with mapping, which are really great. Their mapping app for iPads and phones is brilliant and great fun to use on your interactive whiteboard as well, because you can do flyovers and zoom in and look at the topography of the landscape as well in 3D. So, and I think that's about, from the personal level, I think that's about £26 a year. So both of those are really worth looking at. Oh, I will just add that Digimaps has a historical layer. You can look at 1890s mapping and 1950s mapping using a slider. So for example, you can see how Hackney Marshes changed when the Olympic Park was built and all that kind of thing. It's just great. So I would thoroughly recommend it. Is that okay, Julia? Yeah.
That is brilliant, Paula. Thank you. I can't recommend Digi resources enough. Many of them are written by Paula. She hasn't said that, but they are fantastic, especially the progression document. And if you can have free trial membership for a month at the moment, I would really recommend you go and look at the resources that are there. Stephen, I'm just wondering if you'd like to say something about atlases as we're on to maps.
Well, I'd recommend them. I think that we recommended them earlier as well. I mean, atlases traditionally have been thought of as a reference, a bit like a reference book. You use them to look things up. And yeah, that's absolutely a good way in. But also maps are themselves creative documents, and comparing maps and coming to a map with a question. If you look at, let's say, a map of the British Isles or something like that, you can notice that the towns are all crowded together. They're not evenly distributed. Why is that? There's your inquiry question. If you then compare it with a map that shows the relief, which shows the upland areas and the lowland areas, you'll see that very few big towns are in the mountains and they're all in the flat areas. That begins to, the maps bat off each other, and they begin to tell that story of the world, which I was mentioning earlier. So if you want to find out a place where it is, go and look at an atlas. If you want to ask some questions and draw in some different themes, I think that atlases can tell us an awful lot about the sustainability questions which children have, and give us information about what's going on, whether it's in climate or the loss of biodiversity. It can also, they can also be, I'm certain you're well aware, be jolly useful when you're looking at historical stuff. So you can go back and look at where towns were in the past, for example. Colchester was a big, important capital city at one point. It isn't any longer. What's happened? And so on. So we've got lots of opportunities for using atlases as a creative teaching resource.
Thank you, Stephen, very much indeed. Somebody asked about scale, and I know scale was specifically mentioned in Ian's blog. So Paul has given us an example of very large scale plans that you can see on Digimap, through to, as Stephen's been talking about, maps of the whole world at a very different scale. If you're interested in ideas for teaching about scale, the Everyday Guide to Primary Geography series has got several books in it, which include some ideas for teaching scale. And Anthony, I've got a feeling you've run a couple of workshops on scale in the past. Would you like to say something about scale?
I have. It was, thank you, Julia. It was particularly in relation to size and relative size, and giving children that sense of scale related to what we consume, related to waste, which is a particular interest of mine, related to clothing. And certainly there are some images in the free PowerPoint that I've put earlier on in the chat that you can have a look at, which is available as part of the conference downloads. Well worth having a look at those conference downloads from various conferences. I'll just copy and paste it in the chat again. So thanks, Julia.
Thank you, Anthony. So people are constantly putting in the chat access to resources that you might, that are being mentioned or that you might want to know about. We are saving the chat and we are going to use it to produce a resource list. And I think somebody was also asking, are we recording this? Am I right in thinking the answer to that is yes?
We are, yes.
Thought we were. So I think we're not exactly certain how we're going to make it available yet, but we are recording this and we are hoping to make it available for those people who are apologising they have to leave because their building's going to be locked up or they've got to go and pick up their child from childcare. So we're very much hoping to make this available to everybody who's here and wants to see right to the end but can't. Kate, I'm conscious of the time. Is there another group of questions or issues being raised commonly that we could quickly talk about before we finish?
There's two, so apologies for the one I'm not going to go for. People are questioning about how to show the breadth of data or the breadth of coverage as well as the in-depth coverage.
So breadth of coverage, breadth of coverage, and what was the other one, Kate?
And scope of coverage, so the extent of the curriculum that you're covering as well as being able to cover it in depth.
Okay, so breadth and scope. Jen, I'm wondering, can I come to you to talk about this? Because I know you've been thinking about this very hard in your own school.
Yes, and with some local schools as well. Yeah, for me, what's worked really well in my school is we have like curriculum drivers for either a half term or a full term topic. So when geography is your driver, that's where you then link it into other areas of the curriculum as well. So for example, the one that's worked the best, because we've taught it twice despite, you know, COVID, has been rainforests. And there's so much you can cover with rainforests. You can get your locational knowledge in, your climate, your mapping. You can get more about, you know, what your rainforests are like, all through specific geography lessons, but also then there are some great texts out there for guided reading and literacy, like The Great Kapok Tree, Shaman's Apprentice, DT, building, you know, rainforest shelters, so that you can get your science through as well. But in your geography, you're looking at, what do people who live in the rainforest, you know, how do they make their shelters, looking at your DT, your science properties, all things like that. I think for us, and the best way to do it for our school has been, rather than picking statements, you know, from a progression document or the national curriculum, having a journey to go on and making things fit that way. So, you know, what is your endpoint? So for the rainforest, you know, we want the children to understand why the rainforest is important, who it's important to, and how we can protect them. So again, you go back to the beginning of that journey, you are looking at your mapping skills, your locational knowledge to begin with, your biomes, your climate maps, and then you're going more in depth, maybe with a little bit of science as well, with what rainforests are actually like. And then, you know, your deforestation, how things have changed, different uses that people use the rainforest for. You know, you can do it really beautifully if you're allowed to do a topic. If you're not allowed to put it in for whatever reason as a topic, having a succinct geography unit again, so still going on that journey through your geography lessons, I think is the best way to make sure you're covering lots, but also making it meaningful and getting that depth for the children, rather than, as I said, you know, picking an LO off a progression document, which, if you know you don't have the knowledge, can be a little bit difficult, which is why I suggest coming to things like this. I think, does that answer the question?
That's great, Jen. It's a very big argument in favour of a cross-curricular approach in order to achieve both scope and depth of learning. So that's great. Thank you very much indeed. For those of you who are interested in cross-curricular approaches, there's a book called Leading Primary Geography, edited by Tessa Willey, and in that there is a whole section on cross-curricular approaches to primary geography, covering the core subjects, the other foundation subjects, and planning for cross-curricular approaches. So you might be interested in that, and I imagine somebody will put it up in the chat as I'm speaking. Okay, it's now 5 to 6, and we agreed that we would stick to an hour, as we know everybody is very busy and needs to get on with the rest of their lives. So I would like to thank you all very, very much indeed for coming. We very much hope you found it enjoyable and informative, and that you will want to stay in touch with us. We will be producing a resource list based on the discussion today within the next few days, and we will be tweeting about that. I want, of course, to thank everybody who has organised this. Helen and Paula in particular for agreeing to be our first speakers at our first Geography Live event. Thank you both very, very much indeed. We were thrilled, absolutely thrilled that you were willing to do it. You were our first picks. Thank you very much indeed. I'd also like to thank the rest of the Geography Live team, Steve, Jen, Kate and Anthony, who have all been beavering away like mad in the background during this session and for the last 10 days or so since we first had this idea. I'd like to thank again Ian and Jonathan for coming. I hope they found it informative as well. We do have a very brief survey that we would like you to fill in, because this will give us more information about what you would like for the future. We will not be keeping your emails as a result of you filling this in, as we've already explained, but we would like to know what people would like in the future. So if you could fill that in, we'd find that really useful. And we very much hope that you will follow some of us on Twitter. So Anthony, if you could just flick through to the next, there we are. So there are, you could follow us on our Twitter handle for the Early Years and Primary Committee, on the GA, of course, and Manor Charney, which is Charney Manor Conference, takes place in February every year, focusing on research in primary geography. Many members of the committee have their own Twitter accounts as well, which you will be able to find if you go to any of these accounts. You'll find many of us there. So I think it remains just for me to thank you all very much for attending. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it useful and interesting, and hope to see you at our next event on the 30th of June. Thank you all very much indeed.